Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you will apply to a particular school being highlighted, you should listen to all of the episodes, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Lastly, if you have any questions you'd like me to cover on future episodes or any comments you'd like to share, please email me at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at www.collegeadmissionstalk.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Rihanna Peasy, who is an admissions representative for Glion and Roches. Rihanna represents two of the most highly regarded hospitality schools in the world. Both schools were founded in Switzerland in the middle of last century, and since that time, they've produced more than 30,000 alumni between them, as well as establishing campuses in the UK and Spain. As higher education institutions, they offer undergraduate and graduate degrees, all accredited by Niche, which is headquartered in the United States, and also accredit schools here like Harvard and Yale, just to name a few. One of the things that sets Glion and Les Roches apart is that both schools have an amazingly diverse student mix with around 100 nationalities represented on campus. Rihanna and her team are responsible for ensuring that American students are very much part of that mix. Rihanna, thank you so much for being here today. I'm looking forward to this conversation as it's the first time that we're talking about international schools. How are you today?
I'm great, John. Thanks for having me. This is going to be so fun.
So let's get right to it. What can you tell us about Glion and Les Roches and its unique offerings that set them apart from other universities?
I'd have to say location, location, location. And they bring it up all the time, when we talk about traveling and going to college. And of course, you want to look at a lot of things like the academic program, the cultural lifestyle that students are going to be having in these countries. But the hospitality was originated in Switzerland. So if you are going to go to an international school for a career like this, you really want to put yourself in Switzerland. And then like you mentioned before, we have that beautiful new campus in London. We also have a campus in Spain. So I think having those unique campuses, like five campuses globally, is what kind of sets us apart.
Well, that's terrific. And I didn't know it was 5 campuses globally. So it's Switzerland, UK, Spain, and where else?
In Switzerland, we actually have 3 campuses. So, Glion has 2 and Les Roches has 1, and they are about an hour and a half from each other. But those are like the main campuses. And then the other smaller campuses, London and Spain, are almost like satellite campuses for the schools.
Understood. So, Rihanna, why should students consider going to college overseas? And what are the potential benefits of studying abroad?
Well, I believe that anything that shapes you, right? Taking you out of your comfort zone, and that's what college is, a lot of that. But I think going abroad, it can make you grow personally, it can make you grow professionally. And we talk a lot about soft skills, right? When you're meeting different people, different cultures. So I feel like one of the biggest attributes that anybody can do when they decide to leave the US or leave their home country to go to college or go explore is that you're going to be growing professionally and personally. I feel like that's like a big part of growth and development.
So, what specific advantages does Glion and Les Roches offer students who choose to pursue their education at those schools?
Well, I'd say again, network. We talk a lot about careers when we talk about these schools, and it's of course it's a college experience. So, most schools here in the U.S. those are 4-year experiences, and so with the 3.5-year program that we offer for the undergrad, and also for the summer program, we have shorter programs and longer programs in terms of master programs. Students are just able to get into a totally different network, and not even our alumni, but the hiring managers, the faculty. So they're giving students a sneak peek into what this industry is like. And coming from an education background like yourself, hospitality is very unique in that where it's all about connections. And I mean that's what life is about. It's about relationships, fostering relationships, and making these connections. But I have to say, we have been doing that like since the 60s. So we have so many connections for these students, whether it be like what we're talking about in terms of academically, or even for career placement, for internship. I know we're going to talk about internships in a minute. I think those schools have such a broad expanse network. And that's something that I think students and families really respect when they start looking at a school like this for international hospitality management, because that really it's all about your network. It's all about who you know. And they also, I would say, a lot of our alumni come back and they hire current students, so that's great.
Well, that's terrific. And you emphasize networking and establishing relationships, and obviously attending a school overseas will foster a global network for your students, which I think is terrific. So we appreciate that. So let's get into the application process, if you don't mind. Can you walk us through the application process? And are there any specific requirements or considerations for international applicants?
Yes. So for all my students coming from the East Coast, like I would say normally they are applying online. And what we're looking at is, of course, their CV, their resume. Now, those are guaranteed items that you're going to need in the college admission process. Where we kind of stand out, where I think it's a little bit different, is that we are going to be doing an interview with students once all the documents have been collected. So, I think you would just sit down with your child, you'd go through the website, you'd have everything ready on your desktop, you'd go ahead and work on that essay. I feel like, I mean, most all colleges require an essay, but where I find like a lot of the families that are looking at this specific school and going abroad, you really want to have your personality come out in that essay, right? And you really want to have your personality come out in that interview. So those are, I think, are the two probably unique things that we work on a lot with our students. I actually coach them through a lot of that process, because when they, I think even when you're getting a job interview, you have to thank the hiring manager. So I tell all the students it's really important, and these are like life skills too. It's not even like specific to the college admission process, but you have to thank your interviewer. You have to have all of your transcripts and everything organized. And we can accept a student with their provisional transcripts, and then after they graduate their senior year, they would need to send them in as soon as they can. And so a lot of the students, because we are rolling admission too, and I don't know if that's unique to international schools, that they have the rolling admission process, um, but that they are looking at their transcripts when they graduate, and that's like a provisional letter of acceptance until they do finish their senior year. Um, but yeah, I think that those are probably the unique things that we offer, and that what we're sharing with students when they apply.
So you mentioned that you're rolling admissions, and I also appreciate how you talked about after documents are collected or submitted by the students, that they do in fact have to participate in an interview. And you touched upon some tips in terms of an interview, but what else would you say a student can do in terms of preparing for that interview?
So, what I usually do with the students is I have a series of questions. And, just like how anything, you really want to be prepared. So, I coach them in that aspect where you can answer a series of questions. orally and written, and that helps the interviewer and the student understand what exactly we're talking about, and so that they're not kind of nervous, coming off of, because I think it is, it's one of the parts I feel like with college admission, that it is kind of this gray area, and it is kind of not scary, but it can be scary. So the more counseling I can do, the more counseling sessions I can do with my students, that they feel more at ease. Then when they go into the interview, it's like perfect. You guys, you just nailed it. And it's all about preparation. It's all about practice. So we do a little bit of a mock interview as well. I can ask them a couple of the questions that the interviewer would ask them. And John, they're more in terms of obviously hospitality and hotel and business, but innovation. We talk a lot about innovation, and going back to their high school career. Where did you use innovation in your in your curriculum, or where in your extracurricular activities? Where have you stood out and become a leader? Those, I think, are the things that not only colleges are looking for, but employers are looking for that too. Like, how can you be a critical thinker? So we talk about those critical five a lot. I think, I'm sure you do too with your students. And I think that we go back to that often, I think, when we're counseling students for college, for their college app.
Well, that's great. And talking to them about past related experiences will help you determine the type of student that they're going to be once they're on your campus. So we appreciate the insight. What other qualities or attributes does Glion and LaRoche look for in prospective students during the admissions process?
Well, I feel like what most students are trying to get across to the college is, in fact, what they did just accomplish in high school, and how they are collaborating with other students. And it's hard to kind of showcase that, right? So we're utilizing two things. We're utilizing their motivational essay. We're looking for any time that they stood out from the crowd, in terms of in terms of citizenship, anything that they've done in their community, any community service. I mean, I highly recommend students in their sophomore and junior, even their senior year, to do some sort of community service and some sort of leadership role, because it does stand out to a school like this as a premier hospitality school. That's how you can set yourself apart, I think, from the other students, is by kind of pulling from your resume and pulling from your CV and pulling from the courses that you took in high school, and explaining that in your essay, in your interview, so that you really can come across just not as like a regular, a flat student, that you have
Right,
some
right.
excitement behind you. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
It does. And those are great tips that you're sharing. I'm curious though, can you share any other tips or strategies for students to make their application stand out from the competition?
Well, at times I feel like when you're looking at a student's application, um, I see a lot of regurgitating information, right? And now with, I don't know, this chat GPT, I don't know if kids are just going to start writing essays with like a VI, an AI. You don't want to regurgitate our brochure, right? You want to find an experience that you had and share that in a collective kind of creative way. So telling about a story about yourself. And I do find when students are looking at a career in a school, like going into hospitality and hotel management or entrepreneurship, that there was a time when somebody made a difference in their life, or there was a time and that something happened to them, and it stood out to them, and it really did shine through. That is the time where they can write about it, and you can read it right off the paper. Like, it pulls on your heartstrings. That's what you're looking for. That's what we're looking for. And that's how you can stand out against everybody else without just, you know what I'm saying? Like regurgitating information. And I think that essay too, and the interview side by side, um, just having, I guess, being confident, right? Being confident in yourself and what you just accomplished. And I think I go back to the parents all the time, because parents, it's not, of course, it's the teachers, but it's the parents who are instilling these values in these students. And those students and those parents, again, probably have talked about it a million times, what they're going to write about in their essay. But the kid has to write it. I can tell when a parent's been, stepping in to say a couple of things. So just making it like sound authentic and yeah, sound like themselves. And again, like writing a story about yourself is so key. Maybe a gritty story. What do we think about gritty stories?
Well, I like that, and I like how you talked about not telling you as an admissions representative about your school. Like you said, regurgitating information that a student and their parents might find in your brochure. You know what your schools offer. You don't need the student to remind you in their essay, and that would be a missed opportunity because the point of the essay, separate from the activity sheet or the transcript, is to give you more insight in terms of who the student is as a person. So we appreciate that. And of course, I was really curious, what is the yearly tuition to attend, and
Mm.
what types of financial aid or scholarships do you offer for international students?
So this is a great question, and the way I like to explain it to families is that with a school like Glion and Les Roches, you're going to be in college for 3.5 years. You're going to be That's 7 semesters, but you're going to be actually taught by a teacher for 5 semesters. So every semester is 30,000 US dollar for the tuition, and that is right in line with most U.S. schools. I think actually it's maybe a little bit less. But so John, so for semesters 2 and 5, there is no tuition fee because those are the internships that we speak so highly about that we've embedded into our curriculum. So the scholarship opportunities and the financial aid opportunities that are available for families are specifically with each family. They must apply for the financial aid package with their application. And that is, I would say, looked by the scholarship committee every month, and so a family just needs to express that they are looking for some aid. We also have merit-based scholarships that help families out, and then every year they need to reapply with the school, just like every other school. But I feel like when students are applying for financial aid, they definitely have to do specific things. They have to write an essay of why they need the aid. They have to do a budget, and I think that's really helpful. I think families to really see on paper, what is this going to cost us? And then they also have to factor in, for the merit, is letters of recommendation. And we actually require both for the financial and for the merit, a letter of recommendation, a separate letter of recommendation from a faculty member or from an employer. So, yeah. And then I also, during that semester where your students are on internship, they can get paid. We don't require that and we don't actually encourage it. But if a student is signing a contract to work in Dubai at a hotel, for 6 months and they're going to get paid, that's something that a family is very appreciative about. So, if that's important, I think that also comes up in the counseling process that a student could. Now, here's an example for a school like this: a Glion or Les Roches student coming from Long Island could come back to Long Island and work in Manhattan and live in their parents' home for 6 months. Not everybody wants to do that. Or I've had families who've had aunts and uncles who live in France. They live with that aunt and uncle and they save all that money and they work every day for 6 months and they explore what it is to be working. So, as students, and I know we're going to talk about internships in a minute, but as students are going through this, college experience, there's opportunities for them to actually not live in a dorm and get their meal plan and and pay for housing. They could live in a specific part of the world that would support their financial needs and their so every and so I also like it's a very personalized school where we really do work with families and students depending on what they need. I also have you ever heard of this? It's called Scholarship Owl.
I have heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, and I found there's a lot of local scholarships too that students can apply for in their own city, in their own town. So, and they can use those grants towards, their college tuition. So, um, but yeah, that's basically, I know it's a huge, what's the ROI on college, right now?
Well, you bring up a lot of great points. I'm happy that you mentioned Scholarship Owl, and I just want to point out that if there are any links that you want to share with the students and their parents, just provide them to me, and of course, I'll put them in the show notes. By default, I always put the Office of Admissions in the show notes, but if there are any other links, as this is the first time we're speaking about international schools on the podcast, so I'm really excited. So again, if there's anything in particular you want to share, we'll put them in the show notes. Thank you so much. And how does Glion and Les Roches support students' transition to studying abroad and help them adjust to a new culture and environment?
Well, I'd have to say it's our events committee, and it is our student service committee. So on both of the campuses, we have a strong student government association. It's student run, student led. So in the first week, we have induction week where students are going to be walked through. So this is something it's kind of interesting with our school is that we have a practical experience semester. So students are actually being fitted for chef coats. They're being fitted for maitre d' suits, and so during that first week, the students are doing a lot of team building. So we have different activities. We take them on different tours into the city so they can understand, they're new to Switzerland. So we take them into Montreux. We take them into Marbella if they're on the Spain campus. Um, and, I've found sometimes, not all my students, but I know I've heard from other counselors in other parts of the world where students are just in their room. And so what happens then, right? Because they're in their room, they don't want to come out, they don't know anybody. So we do different team building activities. You automatically create a friend and you create a group of students who are going to be your network because we do so much team building in the beginning. And I think that's really, really helpful. And it's, like I said, it's student led. But we do have a student services and we have an events committee, and they are always providing different activities for the students just to explore and get into campus. And yeah.
That's great to transition them to not only your schools, but also being overseas, which I think is terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, you touched upon many of the internship opportunities, but let's dig a little deeper. Are there any specific internship or career placement opportunities that Glion and LaRoche provide its students?
Well, I'd have to say, as being one of these premier schools, you're really looking at the network of employers and the network of alumni. So every year we have 100 companies that just come to our campus. They are coming directly to the campus, and the students get one on one interviews with all of the hiring managers from all of the top luxury brands, hotel brands. We work a lot with different sporting facilities like Formula One, FIFA, UEFA, Olympic Committee. Gucci has just come into our school because they are looking for luxury business managers. This is a new track. Glion is known for its luxury sector. And when I say luxury, I'm not talking about hotels, John. I'm actually talking about retail, about airlines, about cruise ships, helicopters, yachts. Of course, there is watches and fashion involved in that. So when you have Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Apple coming to your school for recruitment, for internship, and for career placement, you have the best of the best in front of you. So the way we coach our students is to obviously dress the part, get ready for the interview, and those internships always lead to jobs. I'd have to say 75% of our alumni are leaders and managers. So that means they are going into the corporate world coming out of our school. They are utilizing that internship that they had, or two internships, I should say, that they've had throughout their career in college to network, to connect with different hiring managers. And of course, you can go back to school for your master's, but I think with those 2 internships with the companies that are recruiting our students, they want to start working when they get out of school. They want to start seeing that ROI, getting a great salary. And so I mean, that's right there is the practical experience is that's what employers want. They want you to understand how to do a job. So those internships, they are obviously soft skills, but they are working with hard skills for students just to understand what is it like to be in a role like within a hotel or within a luxury sector. So yeah, I think it's just everything is about preparing you for the real world, and that's what these internships do. And the companies that we've been connected to over the years, we just have a great lineup right now. I think of companies that are loving our students, and they seem really happy with the work that they're doing, and I think that speaks volumes.
Well, that's terrific. You mentioned ROI, return on investment, multiple times. You talked about the tremendous networking opportunities worldwide. 100 companies come on your campus to conduct one-on-one interviews. Initially, those lead to internships, but then, of course, they lead to many jobs. So that global connection, that global networking is something that's truly unique to your schools. So this has been a great conversation, and we asked a lot of questions. Before I get to the last question, I was curious, are there any questions I didn't ask or any topics that didn't come up that you wish to share with us now before we get to that last question?
Let me think. Well, I guess the one thing I would bring up is that it's all in English. Everything is taught in English. We did just start a bilingual program in our Spain campus, which I think is fabulous.
Great, great.
And we focus a lot on languages. So for students coming out of U.S. high school, they typically do have a foreign language requirement. We do require the foreign language to be taken while they're on our campus because it's just embedded into the program and understanding different languages. So we teach students French, German, Italian, Spanish, and we also have Mandarin. But I do want to just emphasize that everything is in English, even though they're in a French-speaking part of Switzerland or Spain, and yeah. So I think that's an important part to remember.
Well, we appreciate that. And like I said, this has been a great conversation. Unfortunately, it does lead us to our last question, which is what are your top 3 pieces of advice you would give students and their parents who are getting ready for the college admissions process?
Well, I'd say tip number 1 would be to go back, and look at what you've done throughout your high school career and really look at like where you were shining the most and try to highlight that area in a couple of different aspects. So either in the essay or in the interview, go to the campus, see the campus, right? If you have the ability to tour 10 schools this summer, go because where you smile the most is where you're going to be happy on that campus. If you cannot get to a campus, you can do a lot of virtual tours. Um, we provide open days for families, and I think the ones that come really do utilize just understanding a little bit more about the campus and the culture. And then I think my last tip would be, John, for families who are looking at a school that, their kids is really excited about, but they don't know a lot about, ask the counselor to speak to alumni. Ask the counselor to speak to a current student. Those are your best pieces of advice because they've been there, they've done it. And I think the other, yeah, I guess those would be my top tip would be, yeah, experience as much as you can about the campus. If you can't get there, do it virtually and try to talk to somebody who's come out of the school and really look at your background.
Well, thank you so much for a tremendous conversation. This has really been great. And I'm so happy as I know that this is going to help so many students and their parents as they navigate through the college admissions process. I hope to have you again. Thank you so much, Rihanna.
Oh, thanks, John. This is so fun. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Cap.